Do you want to see what it looks like when you give your horse a really good warm-up and you actually put 2 rides together in a row, back to back? Well, stick around because this was a really, really good ride, and I'm pretty proud of how he's coming along. Alright, welcome back to Becky, Amio Horse Training, and this is Bonnys Six Shooter and ride number 12. Now, this is September 22nd of 2022, and as you can see, the weather's already started to change. I'm in a hoodie and a vest. Man, it's crazy how quickly that can happen. And this is kind of the false winter. It'll get really cold on us, and then it'll warm back up again one more time before it starts to get truly, really cold. So you better believe I warmed him up really good today before we started, made sure his mind was right, made sure there was no hump in the middle of his back under that saddle. And, you know, it also really helped that I was actually able to string 2 rides together in a row. I mean, haven't done that very often on this guy, that's for sure. And that's just kind of the life of a colt starter, a horse trainer, somebody who's marketing horses. You know, it's not what I intended by any means. I really had good intentions of getting this colt's first 20-30 rides done before I started marketing those horses back in August that I had in the sale. And 2 of those horses were my personal horses. 2 horses were Lowing Ranch horses. And so I was really committed to getting those horses, to finding really, really good homes. So in this case, you know, I knew Shooter was going to be around for a really long time, and I knew I could kind of take my time on him, and I knew I also did not want to rush him at all. I didn't want to rush this horse. As we could see through, you know, all of his sessions, that when we pushed him, when we rushed him, we just, you know, had more problems with him, so we were better off making the sessions really short. Making them really, really, you know, emotionally and mentally, not putting a whole lot of pressure on him. He just seemed to do a whole lot better and progress a whole lot faster when we backed off on the pressure we put on him. So we saw him spook there just a few minutes ago, but really, you know, my theory with the spook is to just ignore it. If I ignore it and don't make a big deal out of it, then it's just not a big deal. He downregulated on his own. He figured out that it was no big deal, and we moved right on. So I really like how he's walking off really quiet. He's being really reasonable. He's kind of got nod and bob to his walk. He's comfortable. He's moving out. And, you know, it just makes you feel pretty good going into the ride, knowing that, you know, I did my due diligence warming him up today. And that puts me in a better mental space. You know, not only does it put him in a good physical, mental, and emotional space, but it puts me in a really good mental and emotional space as well. Knowing that I've done this work, knowing that, you know, I had him warmed up properly and willing and accepting to go to work today under saddle. After what we learned yesterday about being so consistent with these small circles and the change of my hands, I went back to doing those exercises again today. Again, so it's to help him know this is what's expected of him. And I'm just making these small circles, change of hand, open my hand up to change directions, bring it back to center. When I go to change directions, open up the new hand. And then when I come to center, bring my hands back to center, open my hand up again, change directions, just getting him following his face and changing directions. This is the precursor to the drop to trot lead change that I really promote a lot to help get their mind right, to help get their footwork correct. You know, it's asking him to follow his nose, change direction, figure out his foot speed, balance himself, follow my hand. And we see him get really quiet here and come down to a walk for a second, but then I ask him to keep going again. But you can see there how effective this just particular little game is at getting them really, really quiet and getting them focused on the job at hand. And if you're following along at home, you know, I'm not prioritizing the shape of the circle or how perfect the transition is in between the figure eights. That's not my goal here. What I'm prioritizing is his mental and emotional well-being. How well is he taking the transition? How reasonable is he being? I'm not looking for a perfect shape here. Just remember, this is ride 12. We're not going to get a perfect balanced circle at this point, okay? I just want him to remain quiet. And once he's remaining quiet, I go ahead and let him go out to the sides of the arena. I let him expand his circle and go out on a straight line. And because he's in the correct mental and emotional state now he's in a place where it's okay. I can start asking him for more and putting a little more pressure on him. So that's why I've added in the stop, the backup, the roll away, and taking off again. And again, with the roll away, I'm not trying to zoom out of this roll away. I'm not trying to add a bunch of speed. I'm actually okay if he comes out of the roll away slower than when he went in at this point in his training. There's going to be a time and a place when we will ask him to go faster, so that when he leaves a barrel, he's going to leave that barrel faster than how he went into it. But for right now, for the emotional and mental well-being of this horse, and getting the foot placement correctly and helping with the correct technique and making this a good experience for him, we're just going to keep it slow and easy. And remember, he's not a horse that we can bang on. He's not a horse that we can drill on. And that's part of being a good horse trainer, being a good horseman, is knowing what you can and can't do with each horse. There are some individuals that can really take drilling on something over and over and over again. And generally speaking, the speedbred horses can. They're more arena type horses, but he's got that, Hancock Blue Valentine blood in there. That Bonny Blues on his top side, and they are big outside riding kind of horses. So this drilling on him, I try to avoid it at all costs. I want to do enough to get the footwork correct and to learn the lesson, but I also don't want to overdo it so that I've made him crabby and made him resentful, and to the point that he's just not reasonable and not willing to work with me anymore. So there's a fine line there, and that's part of horse training and riding and groundwork and whatnot, is we're practicing every single day. So, I've had somebody in the comments complain about something that I was doing and, why didn't you do this instead? And it's like, well, at the time, this seemed like it was the best thing to do for this horse in that moment. And we learn from it and we move on and we try something different the next day. And that's kind of what we've been doing with Shooter this whole entire time. And I've been bringing you guys along in the process to show you what I've done with this horse and how I've worked on him. I really like how in this ride he's been allowing me to place his feet. He's been slowing down his mind and slowing down his body enough to allow me to maneuver him and put him in the correct frame. And when he got a little speedy there at times, all I had to do was bring him down into a little bit smaller circle than what he was working. And look at something else. He's not spooking on this south side of the arena. He's not bothered by this side of the arena anymore. It's like a freaking miracle. I don't want to say I doubted it, but it seemed like he was never going to get better about this side of the arena. And now, today, stringing a couple rides together in a row, being consistent in my warm-up and my groundwork, we've got a horse that's a little bit more willing to go down to this south side of the arena. It's not that big of a deal to him. And so, again, he got a little speedy on the end over here, and I'm able to just put him into a circle, slow his feet down, slow his mind down, get him balanced. He almost comes down to a trot on me as I work around here, and we're able to fix that. And I do let him break down to a trot, and I just let him keep working. I'm going to use these ground poles here to break up this a little bit. Now, the ground poles are fantastic to work a horse on. So many good things in ground poles. A, they have to negotiate stepping over. They have to get brave and bold and confident to step over something on the ground. This is going to translate directly to whatever you ask him to step over out in the pasture, whether it's a tree branch, a water puddle, runoff, a fence line, whatever you may need them to step over out in the pasture. And he's confident and bold enough to work this. He gets this a lot in the groundwork. He has to navigate his stride length. He has to balance not only himself, but me as well. And he has to keep an even cadence going over these ground poles. You know, ground poles aren't just for English horses. They're for Western horses as well. Okay, so I'm about to run out of horse here. All right? Mentally, emotionally, physically, I'm starting to run out of horse. And he's in a really good place mentally right now. So this is where I'm going to take the opportunity to try to add a new skill to his resume here. I'm going to start with working on 360s. Now, my 360s are not the same as what you see in a reining class. I want to make that abundantly clear here, okay? They are not going to look like a spin that you would find in a reining class. Mine is a hard stop, like a calf roping stop, where I spin around in a 360 and I take off in the same lead that I came in on. Now, there's a bunch of ways to do it. You can do a roll away with a 360 on top. You can do a 360 in on the same lead, out on the same lead. You can jump out on the opposite lead. It depends entirely on what you're calling for at that given time. That's the beauty of working the Bonny Foreman basic handle using the Foreman method. So in order to try to not overwhelm you and overwhelm the horse, break it up into two 180s, okay? Really simple. We've already been working 180s with him by doing the rollaways. Now we're going to hold him a little bit longer and add an additional turn to it. We're not necessarily looking for perfect footwork at this point. Right now with this horse, I am looking at working on, is he allowing me to take a hold of him and put his feet exactly where I ask him? Is he being reasonable? Is he accepting? We see some resistance. We see him get a little bit sticky. We don't see him necessarily always rock back onto his hind end. And that's this horse. That's who he is. And we're working with the individual that we're riding at this very moment. I would trust that hopefully most of you guys out there are working on stuff that's a little bit easier, to deal with than him. But if it's something that's more difficult, keep that in mind. We're just going to break it up into two parts, get our 180, hold him, and throttle back on that outside rein to get him to stick that inside leg and take off again. I have an extended video series on getting this correct, doing it on a colt, doing it on an older horse. I could probably share those links in the description box for you so you can see it. On something else that's getting it done more correctly, where I slow-mo it down, I zoom in, I show exactly how to accomplish it, what I'm doing with my legs and my feet and my hands, and where my seat is, where I'm placing my weight. But in this case, we're just introducing this to him. It's where we're cooling him out. We're looking for this long, low headset, relaxing, getting soft, really getting comfortable at the end of his ride. Just a few of these, just a kind of an introduction into a brand new technique, new material. We don't want to get him crabby. We don't want to get him upset, okay? So I'm going to call it a day here. I'm going to finish up with this because we're starting to get real sticky. He's starting to get resistance. We're starting to get a lot of resistance here, so we're not going to pick at him anymore. We're going to finish with a really nice stop, a quality backup where he lowers his neck and head and gets really soft. He cocks a hind foot. He's really accepting of everything that's going on, and we're going to call it a day. I sure appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.